guys, this is Clay Hayes with TwistedStave.com, and today I got kind of a special treat for you. We're here in central Alabama and we're going to go harvest some Osage, and I've got a pretty nice tree here behind me, and I just want to kind of go over some of the characteristics to look at when you're looking through Osage to try and harvest a tree. So behind me here is a pretty nice tree, and I'll kind of get out of the way so you can see it better, but some of the characteristics that really distinguish Osage, I mean, you can see Osage and tell what it is from miles away just by the shape of the tree primarily. And if you look at these branches, they've got kind of these sweeping bow to them, and that's one of the characteristics. I mean, you can see an Osage tree from a long ways off, and all those branches kind of bow out and sweep down like that. That's a big characteristic. Another one, and we'll get up a little bit closer, is the bark. It's got kind of this fissured bark that kind of separates and comes back together and does that kind of stuff. And then if the season's right, and it's not right now, there'll also be these big, they look like green oranges, which is where the name comes from, or part of where the name comes from. You'll see the other part here in just a minute. So this tree right here, actually this group of trees right here, is along an old fence row, and this is oftentimes where you'll find them. But this one particular trunk right here is coming down. This is probably one of the best pieces of Osage I've ever seen. It's all the way around. It doesn't have any branches on it. We've got a good section. It's over 6 feet with no branches at all. One of the things that you really need to pay attention to when you harvest not only Osage but pretty much any tree that you're going to be splitting is the orientation of the bark. Oftentimes you can get a really good idea of what's going on underneath the bark by looking at it. You can tell if the tree has any twist to it. And you can see that the bark on this Osage pretty much runs straight up and down. It doesn't spiral around the tree. If I had a tree like this where the bark was spiraling, I wouldn't even bother with cutting it, because when you go to split that, your stave is going to twist around that tree like that, and that doesn't do you any good for building a bow. When you cut into a green piece of Osage, it's got this white milky stuff that kind of leaks out of the sapwood here, and that's when it starts to dry, that stuff gets really sticky and it'll gum up your saw. So I've got this Osage back where we're going to split it into staves and store it for a little while, and so I've got a log here, and I'm just going to show you how I go about splitting it. This one's good, probably 9 inches diameter, and so what I'm going to do, this log's pretty uniform, pretty straight, so it doesn't really matter which way I split it. I'm just going to go ahead and split it into quarters. And what I'm going to do is just start the axe in it and get it started with a sledgehammer. Open up a little bit of a opening right here, and then I'll start driving these wedges in from opposite sides and just work my way down the stave all the way till the end until it pops open. just keep walking those wedges right on down the log from opposite sides, and it'll split open. Sometimes with Osage, you'll have to come back with an axe and kind of cut some of this stuff that's binding the logs together. It's pretty much split now, but there's a bunch of this type of stuff that needs to be kind of trimmed up. Now that I've got this log split in half, I'm going to go ahead and quarter it, and I do it pretty much the same way. I started the axe kind of up here in the front here. I drove a wedge here, but instead of coming from the top and bottom, I'm just going to go from the top or the bark side, and I'll just walk my wedges all the way down until this stave pops apart. There you have it. This is a quarter log. There's probably 2 staves in this piece here, but you can see how straight this log split. There was no spiral to it. I mean, this line, this edge here, I mean, it's almost you could put a chalk line on it. This is about as good as Osage gets. I mean, this is prime quality, grade A Osage. It's very, very clean, no knots. One very important thing that you need to be conscious of when you're splitting this wood is that you have it, and then you have it again. In other words, if I tried to, this is a quarter log here, and I'm about to cut this in half and make an 1/8 log. But if I tried to split this in thirds, sometimes it works, but most times, if I was to come here and try to split off a third of this, and my 2 parts weren't equal, what would happen is this smaller third the grain would run off the side of the log, and you'd end up with something real skinny down at that end and real fat up here at this end. So I've got all this Osage that we cut the other day. I've got it split into staves, and some of them can be split again and make 2 more staves. There's probably about 50 staves here, maybe a few more. I've got plenty of airspace in here so that we get plenty of air circulation so it'll dry. Now, I've got it kind of stuck in the corner of a barn here and down low to the ground. This isn't the ideal situation for storing Osage, but it's only going to be here for a few months, then it's going to get shipped up to Idaho, and once it's up there, I'll put it up higher in an area out of the sun, but where there's still good airflow so it can get some good circulation. Another thing I've done is I've taken the bark side of this and treated it and put a little diesel fuel on it. And the reason that I've done that is because in this part of the country, if you don't, you'll get worms in this stuff, and there's a couple of different kind of bugs that get in it, but there's one particular kind that will ruin a stave, and they bore into the bark side and get way on down into the heartwood. And when they do that, it just ruins the stave. So I get a lot of questions about how long should I let my wood season or dry before I start working on a bow. All this stuff here is going to dry for probably at least a year, and that's out in Idaho where the humidity is pretty low. If you're in a place like down here in Florida, where you've got high humidity, I would recommend taking your staves and putting them in the house where there's air conditioning and the humidity is a little bit lower, or maybe up in the attic of a house, so where it's a little bit warmer in the summertime. You can start on them before that time, before a year or even a year and a half or 2 years. But if you take the bark and the sapwood off of a green stave like this that was just cut, and you take it down to one ring, and not seal it after that, it'll develop longitudinal cracks, so cracks up and down the stave, and they'll open up pretty wide. Now you can take the bark and sapwood off while it's green, but if you do that, you're going to have to come back with some sort of sealer, either latex paint or like an Elmer's glue or some sort of wood glue. Another good thing to do is to seal the ends of these things. So take some latex paint and paint on here, either that or some glue again, and that keeps the ends from checking or developing cracks. And I haven't done that yet, but I will.